Alright, so I just want to start off by saying I take no joy in announcing this, but it has been reported by Japanese YouTuber Backstreet Game News that there have been rumors on which scenarios may have been removed from Dragon Quest VII Reimagined, one of which is honestly one of my favorite stories in the game. Take all of this with a giant grain of salt, as these are just rumors at this point. I do know that they are planning on removing some of the stories to try and streamline the experience, but these darker and more depressing, iconic stories are to me what makes Dragon Quest VII as incredible as it is. Japanese fans agree and have been critical of these changes online. Let's get to which stories these are and why those stories are so important, but first, if you enjoy Dragon Quest videos, top 10 videos, reviews, and podcasts, please remember to like, subscribe, turn notifications to all so you don't miss the next video. You can also hype the video if you're on mobile, which helps out a ton. I'd appreciate the heck out of it. Now let's begin. Alright, so I'm going to explain these with as little spoilers as possible. For those of you who have not played Dragon Quest VII before, just know that the stories in Dragon Quest VII are some of the best ever told in video games, and some of these stories that are rumored to have been removed are some of the best in the game. I wouldn't say all of them, but definitely one of them. It's also kind of ties in to another story in the game that's probably even better. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do there as far as keeping the better of the two stories that tie into each other. Maybe they're just going to simplify the one that's rumored to be removed. Also, all three of these stories are pretty dark. Some of the darker stories in Dragon Quest VII, some of the darker stories in all of Dragon Quest. So maybe that's why they've been removed. Maybe because I know Square Enix has really been targeting that E for everyone rating when it comes to the Dragon Quest series. They want to keep it so everyone can play the game to help with sales and all that, but at what cost? Alright, so let's get into which stories have been cut. I'm just going to address these stories by the town names that they take place in. I don't know if the towns themselves have been removed. That would be super weird, but I guess they would have to, otherwise it would just be a blank town with nothing in it. And again, if you want to stick around, I'm going to keep this as spoiler-free as possible. Alright, let's go from my least to most favorite story that they have potentially removed here. So let's start off with Volgograd, also known as Remurasaku in Japanese, or Labrys in the original Dragon Warrior 7. So in Volgograd, the villagers are worried about a monster who is living in the village. One of the kids there is trying to get people to stop hurting and attacking the monster. The party, of course, helps that kid, but while doing so, they're whisked away to a mountain where they kind of learn who and what that monster is, and why the kid is trying to protect this monster. There's also been a case of some missing people in the village. The village was originally shrouded in like a mist or a fog that was preventing the crops from growing until a group of warriors set off to try and solve this problem. So this is probably my least favorite of the three that was removed. This one, honestly, if it was removed, not the biggest deal to me, personally. This one is not one of the better stories in the game, and if it was removed, I can totally see why they would have removed the story of Volgograd. It's not a terrible story by any means. It just doesn't stand out amongst the other incredible stories in Dragon Quest VII. So let's move on to the next one, and that is Providence. So the Providence story was based on a group of people that were worshiping this goddess statue, and an army from another town or nation ends up attacking Providence, and Providence assumes it's because they're wanting to take their goddess statue, and this goddess statue is something very important to the town of Providence. Some of the people of Providence are kind of like happy to get rid of the statue because they think that's the whole reason they're being attacked, and they think it's not worth it to be attacked by this invading army just to protect the goddess statue. So they kind of almost look at the goddess statue as being a bit of a curse at this point, and they want to get rid of it. But then, of course, most of the villagers really want to protect the goddess statue because it's brought them such prosperity throughout the years. There's obviously a lot more that goes on in this story. Again, I don't want to go into spoilers. This is a pretty decent story, and it kind of ties into another town's story, but I could see them simplifying this story, cutting back on the details big time, and not really losing too much. Because like I said, it does tie into another story, so it is important in that aspect, but what I could see them doing is having like a flashback sequence in that other town story as to like what happened in Providence. And then that way you're not really losing the details. It does cut back on quite a bit of time, and you're not really honestly missing all that much. This one I could do with or without. It would be nice if it was in there, but it's not a terrible loss. Unlike the following story. So this next story takes place in a town called Green Thumb Gardens. Used to be called Verdham in Dragon Warrior 7, and in Japanese it is Green Flake, or Green Flake. So Green Thumb Gardens is a place that's famous for its herb garden. There's like this massive love triangle between the son of the herb garden owner, also one of the gardeners who works for the son and father, of course, of the herb garden. And then, of course, there's like a maid, and of course, there is a woman who is supposed to be married to the herb garden's son. Basically, somebody is in debt to the herb garden, so they're marrying off their daughter to the son. And yeah, huge love tetra angle. I don't know. It's like a four-way love triangle. Tell me what that's called down in the comments. Anyways, this story in and of itself is quite important. It's very heart-wrenching. It goes into kind of the details of love and loss and kind of hatred. I think there's like some really good lessons in this story that I feel like the game would be missing without. Not only that, but this ties into one of, if not my favorite story in Dragon Quest VII involving what's called the Gray Rain. There is a town in Dragon Quest VII, and Dragon Quest IX kind of referenced this as well, where this gray rain happened that turned all of its citizens into stone. And there was one kid who, if I remember correctly, was like underground when this happened, and he's an old man now, and he's like the only person living in this village. The main Gray Rain story and the story in Green Thumb Gardens do tie into each other very, very well, and I think it would be a huge missed opportunity to not have Green Thumb Gardens in Dragon Quest VII Reimagined. Like I said, it tells the story of a huge love tragedy, if you will, plus tying into the Gray Rain story in Regenstein, which, like I said, is one of, if not the best story in Dragon Quest VII. So this would be a huge loss if Green Thumb Gardens was not in the game. Green Thumb Gardens in and of itself is very, very memorable. It's one of the stories that stands out to me when I think about Dragon Quest VII. So just on its own, it's very important to myself and a lot of the Dragon Quest VII fan base. And then, of course, the way it ties into the Gray Rain story makes it even more important. So really hope this one isn't removed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments on what you think about these stories potentially being removed. Do you think these rumors are just that? Do you think they're just rumors? Do you think there's some meat behind them? Let me know what you guys think. I do think that they could remove Volgograd and Providence without too many issues, especially Volgograd. Volgograd doesn't really need to be there, to be completely honest. It did feel like filler even back when the game originally came out, so I wouldn't be too opposed to that one being removed. Not that I like when developers remove content in a remake at all, but if there's anything that had to be removed, Volgograd could be taken out of there without breaking too many hearts, let's just say. I do want to give special thanks to Eazy-E for supplying the gameplay footage of the stories of these towns. Eazy-E, you can check him out on his YouTube channel. It's just Eazy-E, E-A-S-S-A-E on YouTube, and he does a very good analysis of all of the stories of Dragon Quest VII. Highly recommend his channel. He definitely deserves a lot more subscribers than he has, so be sure to check out his channel and subscribe to him as well. If you enjoyed this video and you want some more Dragon Quest content or JRPG content in general, I also do top 10 videos, reviews, we got a podcast. Please remember to like, subscribe, and turn notifications to all so you don't miss the next video. You can also hype this bad boy up if you're on mobile. It'll help a ton at boosting exposure, and I would appreciate the heck out of that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.